Welcome to the channel, everyone. In this video, I will explain what happened in episode 2 of House of the Dragon and all the Easter eggs I spotted. This video will cover episode 2, so spoiler warning if you have not seen it yet. Kicking things off with the new intro that represents the blood of House Targaryen spreading from old Valyria, branching into Targaryen families and then reconnecting as they marry. Essentially, we are seeing a family tree, beginning with the Doom of Valyria. We then see representations of members of House Targaryen with these little symbols. The symbols we see represent Aegon the Conqueror, Aenys, the king after Aegon and his firstborn son, Jaehaerys and Alicent, and their many branches representing their 9 children. We see Rhaenys and Corlys, who married into the family, showing their link off to the side. King Viserys with Aemma Arryn, who also marries in. And finally Rhaenyra, represented by this symbol, which is similar to the necklace we saw Daemon give her in episode 1. I think the new intro was great, though it would have been nice to hear some new music. I hope as the series progresses, we see the model city of Valyria updated with these new characters. But also, I'd like to see the city begin to decay, symbolizing the downfall of the Targaryen family, and it would also be a nice metaphorical link to the Doom of Valyria. The episode begins more than 6 months after the events of episode 1. The series will have a number of time skips and will show relevant seeds that lead to future events. The pace will likely slow down once we get to a certain point in the story. The episode opens with shots of Caraxes Greyhair, known as Caraxes Crabfeeder, who will be the main antagonist in the next couple of episodes. We get to see how he got his nickname by tying his enemies down at low tide and watch as they are consumed by crabs while the rising tide drowns them. We also see Crabfeeder at the end of the episode, and it looks like he has either some sort of horribly burnt skin or maybe even grayscale. This is the guy Corlys warned the small council about in the last episode. Corlys wants to stop this maniac because he is destroying his ships and killing his crews. This impacts greatly on Corlys and his family's wealth. They are a seafaring people and depend on the trade route in the Stepstones. In the book Fire and Blood, Corlys also states his vessels have been taxed heavily by Crabfeeder for safe passage. So like any great swashbuckling adventurer, Corlys hates when the taxman comes knocking. Viserys hears Corlys's pleas, but is cautious of engaging the Crabfeeder, as he knows he is backed by 3 of the free cities of Essos, known as the Triarchy. Viserys worries that opposing them may lead to a greater conflict, but he assures Corlys that through diplomacy, they will achieve an outcome that is suitable to all parties involved. But there also might be a little bit more going on here. Viserys, in part, may also be doing this as a way to slowly bleed and undermine Corlys, who he views as a bit of a threat to his rule. This situation ultimately leads to Corlys and Daemon's alliance at the end of the episode. I think this scene did a great job of setting up Corlys's view on King Viserys and questioning his inaction regarding the pirates in the Stepstones and Daemon claiming Dragonstone, hinting that the realm and the wider world view Viserys as weak. The show is trying to paint a picture that Viserys is a good man, but good men do not always make good kings. Corlys himself maneuvers politically as a bit of a hybrid between Daemon and Otto. First, trying to manipulate Viserys with words and marriage pacts, reminiscent of how Otto would approach the situation. When this doesn't work, he then pivots to a more action-centric approach by enlisting Daemon to help claim the Stepstones by force. As the episode progresses, we see how Viserys is aware of the threat that Corlys poses to him. We saw last episode that Viserys just wants everyone to get along, and we see him trying to mend the relationship between Corlys and Rhaenys, who he had previously beaten out when the great lords of Westeros voted in his favour at the Council of 101. Viserys wants to avoid conflict wherever he can, but when he is offered the hand of Laena Velaryon, Corlys and Rhaenys' daughter, he is extremely uncomfortable with the idea of marrying someone so young. Despite their ages being a massive issue in our world, this match actually makes a lot of sense in the world of Ice and Fire. Corlys and Rhaenys had felt spurned after the Council of 101, and Viserys himself says that he has always felt the threat of Corlys watching him from Driftmark. So it makes sense to join these branches of House Targaryen, who have been in this kind of Cold War-esque feud. The opportunity also makes a lot of sense from a traditional point of view. Targaryens would almost always marry a close relative to ensure the continued strength of their bloodline, which we know is probably important in the controlling of dragons through some kind of ancient magical connection. When a Targaryen cannot marry a close relative, marrying a Velaryon is the next best thing, as the Valyrians are also from Valyria, and likely share an amount of common ancestry to the Targaryens. So the match makes a lot of sense in the context of this world. However, like all tough decisions, we see Viserys unable to make a choice, and when he does make a choice, the existing problems of Corlys and Daemon are that much worse. This idea is reinforced by Corlys saying, "To elude a storm, you can either sail into it or around it, but you never await its coming." This sums up how Corlys and most of the realm view Viserys, as an indecisive, weak king who lets wounds fester. The imagery of maggots feeding on Viserys' dying hand also visually demonstrates this theme of festering issues, as the maggots feed off the king in a similar way that his subjects feed off his weak will. Viserys is unable to resolve the political situations of remarriage, war, and everything Daemon has been up to, and is slowly being consumed by all of them. Just as with his hand, I feel the showrunners are trying to symbolize that he would likely be better off making the difficult decision of removing the finger to stop the corruption. In the same way, he needs to take decisive action on these political matters. The scene is also used to demonstrate the king's failing health, and the idea that if the king is rotten, the realm will suffer. Next, we see the small council discussing the death of Raymond Redwine, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Harold Westerling, Graham McTavish's character, is to replace him as the new Lord Commander, but this leaves the issue of finding a new member for the Kingsguard. By tradition, there is required to be 7 members at all times. The Kingsguard was created under the rule of Aegon the Conqueror by his sister wife, Queen Visenya. The reason there are 7 members is partially to represent the 7 kingdoms, but was mainly done to appease the faith of the 7, the main religion in Westeros. The Targaryens also adopted the faith of the 7 to help strengthen Aegon's rule by creating a symbolic alliance between the crown and the faith of the 7, who held significant influence throughout Westeros. This idea is similar to the real-world Alexander the Great, who would adopt certain clothes and customs of those he had defeated to ensure the transition from the previous rule to his new rule would more widely be accepted. Becoming a Kingsguard was the highest honor a knight could receive. Normally, it was reserved for exceptional warriors and knights of great renown, but it was also used as a way to form alliances between the crown and other noble houses. This is why Otto tries to dissuade Rhaenyra after she makes her selection. We see the proposed new members of the Kingsguard all standing with their banners, except Sir Criston, who is lowborn. Of the knights presented, we see members from House Caron, House Mallister, House Corbray. I'm not exactly sure who this central house is, but it looks like a white weirwood tree is their sigil. If you know who this is, comment below. We also see House Crakehall and House Tarly. Everyone needs a hobby, right? Some people collect Lego sets or model trains. King Viserys has created a model of Valyria, and he even provides a bit of lore. He states the capital of Valyria was built into a volcano, which they used as the source of their magic. In the books, Valyria was built surrounded by a mountain range of active volcanoes, known as the 14 Flames. These volcanoes were supposedly held at bay by powerful blood mages of Valyria, who could seemingly use the power of the volcanoes to perform great magic. A theory about the Doom of Valyria suggests that the assassination of some of these mages led to the Doom, which was a cataclysmic event caused by the simultaneous eruption of these volcanoes, consuming the empire in a single day. Viserys also tells us about the Enagron, where the blood mages worked their craft. A new bit of lore. In the books, we are told that the Valyrians used blood magic to conduct horrific magical experiments. We read the following: they practiced dark arts, delving deep into the earth for secrets, and twisting the flesh of beasts and men to fashion monstrous and unnatural chimeras. It is believed that for these sins, the gods in their wrath struck Valyria down. The books seem to be hinting that the dragons might have been one of these magical experiments, a magical combination of splicing wyverns that were small, non-fire-breathing lizards from Sithorios, with fireworms, huge fire-breathing flightless dragons that grew enormous in size. The combination of these two creatures seems to fit the fire-breathing enormous flying dragons we see in the show. Some even theorize that the Valyrians and the Targaryens of old took this a step further and spliced human and dragon DNA together, creating a magical link between the species. This might give a literal explanation to the blood of the dragon and how the Targaryens can control and ride dragons through this magical tether. All the talk of of Valyria is used as a metaphor for House Targaryen. Like Valyria at its height, the Targaryens might have reached their peak, and once you reach a peak, a fall is inevitable. A clever bit of foreshadowing. Viserys asks Alicent to keep their chats a secret from Rhaenyra, which will be used to sow the seeds of their rivalry, especially after Viserys proclaims the two will marry at the end of the episode. This fills Rhaenyra with a sense of betrayal by both her father and her best friend. In this episode, Daemon is up to his usual antics. In many ways, he is just a child, screaming for the attention from his older brother. He steals a dragon egg and leaves a cheeky note, proclaiming himself as the heir to the Iron Throne. Earlier in the episode, we are told that he took Dragonstone, which was traditionally the seat of the heir, so him residing there is a symbolic way to show how he views himself as the rightful heir. The letter goes on to say he has taken a second wife, Lady Mysaria, stating that she is with child and is to have a dragon egg placed in the newborn's cradle in the custom of House Targaryen. In the books, this custom was a method that the Targaryens used to hatch dragon eggs. They would place an egg within a cradle of a newborn, which seemed to prompt the egg to hatch, and a lasting bond be formed between the dragon and the rider. We are told of a couple of dragons that hatched through this manner before this point in the timeline. Jaehaerys, the Old King from episode 1, and his sister wife Alicent had eggs placed in their cradles that likely hatched into Vermithor and Silverwing respectively. We also hear of Aemon having an egg placed in his cradle, and the egg likely hatched into Caraxes, the dragon that Daemon now rides. This tradition was also seen as a way of determining whether a child was a true Targaryen. This fact will be important later in the series. In the confrontation with Otto Hightower, before Rhaenyra shows up with Syrax, it seems pretty clear that Daemon was ready and willing to take out the Hand and his men. We see a great shot of Caraxes in all his glories, and it even looks like he is blind in one eye. Otto clearly fears the dragon and views them as an unfair advantage for House Targaryen. When Rhaenyra and Syrax show up, Caraxes and Syrax seem to feel each other out, waiting for the other to make a move. When Rhaenyra confronts Daemon and states that if he wants to be the heir, he just needs to kill her. I love how Daemon pauses for a moment, seemingly contemplating and calculating whether that would actually be a good idea. But at the end of the day, the pair share a bond, and Daemon just wants the love and approval of his brother, so he relinquishes the egg to Rhaenyra. But don't expect Daemon to have given up on this idea of claiming a dragon egg for any future children he might have. At this stage, the Targaryens have a tight grip on the control of dragons and their eggs. But from the books, we know that there are a couple of wild and riderless dragons flying around that may have laid eggs outside of the reach of the Targaryens. I kind of love Alicent's portrayal so far. Though she has not spoken much, we can really get a sense of her character. She is obviously kind-hearted and seems to understand her duty. We also get this great scene of Otto belittling her and her anxious habit to pick her fingernails, saying, "Why are you destroying yourself?" This is a nice bit of foreshadowing, showing that her future actions might lead to her own self-destruction. Finally, the episode ends with Corlys and Daemon. Corlys, after feeling ignored by King Viserys, enlists the help of Daemon to solve the problem in the Stepstones, and forms an alliance with Daemon that will resonate throughout the kingdom. When the realm hears that the wealthiest man and the firstborn male in the line of succession have banded together, rumors of civil war might begin to stir throughout Westeros. If you enjoyed this video, check out the other videos on my channel where I have breakdowns of the episodes, but also deeper dives into the lore of A Song of Ice and Fire. Well, that does it for the video. Thanks for watching.